There's a basic tension in a meditation practice or a spiritual practice. And the tension is that, it's a practice and we do it because we want to improve ourselves and improve our lives. And the goal of the practice is to ultimately accept ourselves as we are, right? And just sit in that tension for a second. I'll say it a couple more times in a couple of new ways. But it's the basic paradox of spiritual practice. And it's been talked about many, many, many times. But often you don't hear about it until later in the path, because at first we're just going to say, yeah, this practice is here. It's like Adyashanti calls it the sales pitch for spiritual practice. It's like it's going to make you happier. It's going to reduce your suffering. It's going to make your concentration better. It's going to make you have better relationships. And there's a lot of scientific evidence that can happen for a lot of people. And if that's why you're doing it, then great. But the ultimate goal of the practice is to let go of goals. For those who are sitting with me on Zoom, you've heard me say this many times, but it's really important to reemphasize. When we talk about letting go in meditation or in the spiritual path, we don't mean get rid of, we mean to not be grasping, right? So when we say let go of goals, it doesn't mean we'll never have another goal, another psychological goal with a plan, and that's not what we're talking about. But we will have let go of that goal, meaning if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't come, it doesn't come. If I'm holding a rock in my hand, I'm holding it this direction and I let go of it, it falls away. If I let it go of it this way, it may just stay in my hand. We don't know which way we're oriented to all the things in our lives. Some things, when we let go of them in the meditation path or in life in general, but sometimes we let go of them and they go away. They're not for us, right? They're not going to be part of our life. We let go of them and there's no magnetism left. There's no relationship left with that thing we let go of. And that's one of the scary things of letting go. But sometimes we let go of a thing and all we've done is removed all the tension from our relationship with that thing. We've released all the attempt to control our relationship with that thing. And so the thing doesn't necessarily go away, but your relationship with it really changes. This can happen in a romantic relationship. You probably, people on Zoom, there's probably sufficiently lived enough life to have had a couple different types of relationship ending experiences. One of them is the relationship ends and you never want to see each other again, right? You just never do. Like it just disappears. There's nothing left, right? There's just like, what were we doing? And it could be bad, or it could just be, there's nothing left. It's just like, there's nothing here. And then there's other times where the intense romantic relationship turns into something else, turns into a friendship, or turns into an acquaintance or whatever, or another kind of relationship. So when we let go of something, we are letting go of our control of that thing. And that doesn't mean it will go away, but it does mean it can go away. So back to the practice. When we let go of the idea of trying to perfect ourselves, the idea of making ourselves our best self, when we let go of the idea of attaining something spiritually or having a goal spiritually, when we let go of the idea of trying to get out of whatever we're in now that's so difficult, when we let go of those activities of mind and heart, sometimes those goals, those attempts, those efforts just disappear. And sometimes they stay around, but in a transformed manner. So in the Zoom class, Matt was talking about how he's having a different relationship with his meditation sit. And most of what he's describing sounds incredibly healthy from the perspective of the meditation path. Why? You can sense, right, that so he was saying that he used to have to sit every day, and I say have to, we often think of that as a good thing, but there was clearly an attachment to making sure he sat every day, right? Some kind of drive or sense of guilt or fear. And that has been released. That's been let go of. Now, when we find ourselves in this new relationship, it is often awkward at first. Go back to the romantic relationship, right? A long-term romantic relationship breaks up, and it turns out later in life you're going to be great friends, right? But there's an awkward period because the way you used to relate to the person is not available. So it requires reconfiguring your relationship. And again, you can intentionally do that, but for the most part, you just have to let it happen. You find your way to a new relationship, or you don't. So as our friend Matt comes back to his practice now without that guilt, something else has to move him to sit. And the habits of mind could be still there, like, no, I'm supposed to sit, right? That's who I am, right? I'm a person who sits, and sitting is good. And I have a whole life and story about sitting and meditation. He's done a lot of it. So there's sort of this ghost of the way one used to be. But the meat of it no longer exists because it's died, right? And so now a new relationship has to arise with the sitting practice. So that's a very particular example, but Jessica, who you all know, one thing she talked about when she first had a big awakening is her whole drive to be an actor disappeared for several years. Just that, whatever was her drive, and I won't go into psychoanalyzing her, but whatever her drive was, like Matt had some guilt there, whatever her drive was to be acting and to be successful at acting just disappeared. It went away. And if you told her before meditation that would happen, that would be pretty scary and something she might be a reason she wouldn't meditate, right? Because no, I have to do the acting, right? But afterwards, it just went away and you don't miss it because it's no longer, the drive is no longer there. But several years later, that the relationship with acting re-arose. but now in a really different way, with a really different center. So the brave thing we are doing on a spiritual path, and look, if you're just sitting for 15 minutes a day to get a little relaxation and a little focus, fantastic. That is a beautiful thing to do. I warn you, if you do it for too long, there is a danger you might get on the spiritual path. So you might start learning things that are deeper about yourself, but you can do it as a method of, self-help in your everyday life without too much danger at first, depending where you are. But ultimately, this spiritual path is designed to allow you to let go of this stuff, including ultimately every aspect of your idea of what a perfect you would be, or a better you would be, or the best you would be. Again, letting go of the idea of a perfect you or the best you is not the same thing as getting rid of the idea. We can still have models for ourselves and ideals for ourselves about how we'd like to behave, and they can still be useful in making us better people within society, within our life. But they're no longer the driving force behind our practice or our life. And I'll just add in there, because I think Nadine's also giving us the flip side of that. We can have one of our main purposes for going deep into the spiritual path is to escape our suffering, to eliminate or get rid of our suffering. And at first, that's really conceptualized as getting rid of our pain and our bad emotions. But ultimately, the only way, again, that we let go, that suffering really gets reduced, is when we let go of trying to get rid of our pain and our bad emotions. So Kathy was talking about the grief she's feeling with respect to her cat. And she was modeling for us, in a lot of ways, a very healthy response, which was, I don't want to get rid of this grief. The goal is not to get rid of the grief. The goal is to feel it as long as it's there. You are letting go of the grief because you don't want to hold on to it, right? You're not trying to keep the grief around. You're also letting go of the idea that you shouldn't be grieving, that you should be happy all the time. You're not trying to push the grief away. When we fully let go and release into our life, we then have to feel all of everything, but that's all we have to feel. We don't have to feel more of it than is there. One of the sort of more advanced skills back in the skill world of meditation that develops over time along the path is learning to navigate these awkward transitions where something is dropped away and now your relationship is different. And this can be with respect to things like, we were talking about a certain kind of guilt or a certain kind of fear, very subtle psychological, historical, traumatic elements of yourself. But it can also just be like, yeah, your cat dies and you have to somehow let go of that relationship in its present form. and allow it to transition into whatever its next form is. Because life is a series of things that have to be let go of. That's all that's happening, really. Everything is flowing away every second. Everything is disappearing. And so we can sort of experience that at a transcendent level where we let the whole universe flow through us and we disappear and no self, and the universe just gets to go, go, go through us. And we aren't there in any way judging or trying to control it. So that's a kind of transcendent, awakened type of perspective. But what happens is it still requires that kind of experience will not be the end of your growth, because it will still require you to come back to be a human being and learn how to apply that transcendent knowledge to the moment by moment loss that we experience as human beings. And loss has a negative flavor, but it's really not a negative flavor. It's just the moment by moment impermanence, the liveness, the constant shiftingness, the fact that our life is a process and not a thing. Our life is a symphony. It's not a note. You can't grasp the symphony if you stop it. Like, oh, I love that one note. This reminds me, there will be times where you're like, I'm going to play just the chorus of this song over and over again. It's so good. So we will get it. You know, we're in some ways failing to grasp the meaning of music when we do that. But, well, I've done it. Yeah. But let's wrap it all the way around back to the beginning. Why do we do a practice if the end goal is to not be practicing? Or why do we have this goal-oriented thing if the main point is to not have any goals? Why do we do that? It's actually there's a lot of wisdom in figuring this part out. We don't know how not to have goals until we do. Most human beings don't know how not to have problems until we do. We don't know how not to be trying to improve things. We don't know how not to walk through our day looking at the bad things and trying to get rid of them, and looking for the good things and trying to get more of them. We don't know how to do that. It is so deeply ingrained in our mind and cultural structure that it is not natural for us at this point in our lives to interact with our life in that way. That's so understandable. Let's just go all the way back to evolutionary biology. If something's threatening your life, this body system has been trained to do everything it can to avoid that threat. And most importantly, the mind that we've come to identify with is designed to do everything it can to avoid that threat. To first judge that threat as bad, to trigger emotions that will get us to move, to ruminate or, think obsessively about the thing until we can solve the puzzle of it. That's what it was designed to do. So until we know there's another way of interacting with life, That's all we know how to do. So what is our spiritual practice? It's kind of like nicotine gum is what it is. or normal gum, like if you got an oral fixation, you're trying to quit smoking cigarettes. And the simple solution is just don't pick up any more cigarettes with your hand. Like, just don't use this hand to pick up the cigarettes, and don't light them, and don't put them in your mouth. Like, that's this, like, just say that, right? So I could say to you, just stop identifying with your thoughts. Right? It doesn't work. Neither of them. And the thoughts is much, much harder than the cigarettes, because you can at least see what you're supposed to be doing. And so what do? You're like, okay, well, when I'm feeling that intense, I'm going to use a replacement. I'm going to put in a lollipop in my mouth, or I'm going to put a nicotine patch on, or, right? We replace it with something that's not causing the same damage. So the addiction of mind is much deeper, much more difficult to let go of, and much more complex. For what a spiritual path gives us, it's a way of satisfying our addiction to trying to get better, satisfying our addiction of trying to solve the problem, satisfying our addiction to having a goal, while removing so much of the baggage, so much of the bad side effects, all the toxic elements, not all of them, but almost all of the toxic elements. Clearing our plate until we can start to get a taste of what it's like to have a moment, maybe, where we're not identified with mind. And then you're like, oh, it's like, oh, I just had 2 days without a cigarette and I felt okay. That was interesting, right? That changes your relationship with the addictive element. And so what meditation allows us to do is change our relationship with our addiction to mind. And then slowly wean us off of it. So when I say slowly wean us off of it, I'm really talking about the indirect path. Mindfulness is an example of that. We just slowly break all the habits, all the different ways that we're hooked into the problem of mind. Again, it's really just like cigarettes. Like, for instance, maybe you always have a cigarette after dinner, or maybe you always have a cigarette, on your break at work, and you need to sort of break those individual habits, the individual triggers for you wanting to pick up the cigarette. The same thing here with the mind, except now there's an infinite number of ways we're hooked. But we practice a meditation sitting still, quiet, and accepting, so that we allow all the hooks to start arising, and then we sit through them. We start to see through them. And every time we've done that, we're starting to learn a skill, which is the skill of noticing identification with mind and letting go of it, until one day we'll get at least a glimpse of what it's like to experience the present moment without identifying with the mind. What it's like to experience the present moment without a goal. What it's like to experience the present moment without any judgment of good or bad of the present moment. And that moment will be a glimpse of awakening. And it starts to change our relationship with our whole life at that point. So it doesn't do you that much good to be like, I'm not supposed to have any goals. I'm not supposed to have any hopes. Because that's just another goal you're setting up to get rid of your goals, to get rid of your hopes. So it's much more useful to say, okay, I have some goals right now. I know there's sort of this idea that I'm going to have to let go of these at some point. It's good to sort of be aware of that from the beginning, see how lightly you can hold them. And then what's the healthiest way I can pursue those goals right now? Meditation is not the only answer to that, but it's one of the answers. It's one of the very healthy answers to how do I deal with all the problems in my life. Meditation is one of the ways of satisfying your mind that you are working on it, right? Without deepening your addiction to the problem. And there can come a point where the meditation itself is the addiction. You know, Matt was sort of describing an example of that, right? A part of Matt's internal psychology was still in a problem relationship with the meditation. It was strong. It's okay. That's always going to eventually that's going to happen. Eventually, whatever is left of the mind addiction, of the ego addiction, another way of putting it, will be put into the spiritual path. But first, we're trying to clean out a lot of the other obstacles, or at least reduce the intensity of them. And there are things in our life where it becomes clear to us that there is no other option but to let go. This will happen to all of us. And aging is the guarantee of this at some point. If you're 22 and you get hit by a car, well, you may never have this experience. But as we age, if we're going to live a full life, we'll start to see this universe is going to make us sick. It's going to make things we love die. It's going to make us die. We're going to lose our health. We're going to lose our youth. We're going to lose our mind. This sounds depressing, of course, but it's true, right? It's true. So let's just accept that. And when we, you know, I'm not that old of a person, but this path makes you face these things earlier. But the beauty of that is you get them out of the way. Because at some point you're going to go, oh, I'm going to die. And there's nothing I can do about it. And die is just one word. There may be other things that are scarier to you, right? I'm going to lose my relationship with this person or that thing. I will never be able to bicycle again, or I will never be able to paint again, or I'll never be able to talk to this person again. This all is going to happen. And when we confront that in life, when that comes up, the tools of the ego are not sufficient, because there is no way the mind can solve that puzzle. It can't go, I will figure out how not to die. You can do that for a while. People do it all the time. Like, I'm going to be the one who lives forever, right? People will do that. Somehow it's all going to come out. I'm going to solve the problem. But eventually, obviously, the mind can't solve that problem. Truth is, the mind can't really solve any problem, but at a certain point, certain problems make it clear to you that the mind can't solve it. This is a very, very scary moment in a human life. And if you don't have a practice, then you just run away from it, right? You just go as unconscious as you can. But it is the opportunity of a lifetime. Because at that point, you realize the only way through is something other than mind. It's some other kind of surrender. It's something maybe you haven't done yet. Now, at this point, a spiritual practice becomes really useful because it can give you a little calmness in the face of this overwhelming obstacle. Because, as Nadine was saying, it gives you a little hope that there people have told me this is the way through, right? It doesn't make total sense, but it's like, it's okay. Like, they've told me there's a way through with this. And that can be bad in the sense that you're trying to escape with your spirituality the moment, but it also is often a very necessary baby step in the right direction. Do you understand what I'm saying? The mind is so overwhelmed with reality at times that you have to give it something so it doesn't freak out all the time, because you can't get anywhere if you're freaked out all the time. And that may be what the spiritual path is, a way of keeping you from freaking out all the time so you can finally face where we are, which is a beautiful, loving, rich, peaceful place. The only way you find that out is by letting go of everything. And you can't do letting go, right? It sort of just has to happen. You have to just continually surrender to that possibility. So this is, there's a dark flavor to this. So I just want to give the flip side of that. There's so many stories of this, of people. I just heard one of these. I can't remember. People get their diagnosis, right, that they're dying. And there are lots of ways to respond to this, but many people respond with an experience of the value of their life becoming available to them in a way it wasn't before. A sense of freedom and openness and love and even excitement. Obviously, the fear can overwhelm. And that happens to a lot of people too. And there's the stages of grief. But often this shock will allow you to drop all the things you're spending your days thinking about. Oh, I'm dying. It doesn't matter I'm $20,000 in debt. Oh, I'm dying. It doesn't matter I'm 20 pounds overweight. Oh, I'm dying. It doesn't matter that whoever dumped me when I was whatever age. Oh, I'm dying. It doesn't matter that Donald Trump is president, right? So you get this taste of letting go of all your problems at once. And here's the thing, we're all dying. I'm giving you your prognosis now. I've looked at the tests. I'm sorry to tell you, 100% chance is not getting away from it. It may be a while, I hope it is. And when you're on your deathbed, what's going to matter, kind of thing, right? And some of us have had these scares already, and Nadine brought this up, and I know she's been faced with these kinds of thoughts in a way that many people don't get faced with early on in life. So you can't guarantee that you're going to have that positive response to those negative things happening, right? That does happen. Obviously, for most of us, it's a more of a gradual thing, and it's more painful. And you can't force it to happen. What we're practicing here is allowing ourselves to be as prepared as possible for our life. Not just those moments at the end, but all our life, this moment right now and the next one. To as prepared as possible to experience all the value that's available to us. And that value doesn't always mean a joyful feeling in the human body. That value might be in grief. That value might be in physical pain. That value might be in relationship ending. But those things are brief compared to the moment by moment value of sensory experience, of nature and people and our own mind and heart. Which I really believe for all of you, you'll know, as someday you'll know the sort of unbounded goodness of all of that stuff that's available for you the moment you let go of identifying with the mind who's judging and trying to make you into a perfect person or a better person. And when you let go of that, you go, oh, wait, I'm already perfect. You are right. You are perfect the way you are. You're all right the way you are. Because you're a process. And every part of the process is necessary and perfect. Not sitting as much as you should, or not knowing how to get your sitting going to the right, that's part of your process. That's perfect. Feeling overwhelming grief and not knowing if you'll ever get out of it, that's part of your process, and that's perfect. It's not perfect by the mind's standards. But to fundamental awareness, to your fundamental true self, it's perfectly okay, exactly as it is. Okay, I've talked too long. So we will sit now.